Welcome, welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos, and I want to thank all of you for being here, including our wonderful live audience for this special event. We're coming up to the 10th anniversary of the Radical Imagination. My guest is Cornel West, who was on the very, very first show with our dear comrade and brother, Stanley Aronowitz.
Brother Stan.
Absolutely.
Stan. Love him,
and if you recall, Stanley ended the show in song, and we followed him on tremendous renditions of the Marseillaise and This Little Light of Mine.
Wow, that's true.
Right? You were a little off pitch, I think, right?
I thought
maybe me.
I thought I was on tune on that.
Yeah,
now, I'm
it's
not,
me.
not on
It's
tune
me.
all the time, but I think I hit the right notes that day.
But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
listen, you all know Cornel West. He's one of the most preeminent, articulate scholars of our generation, of any generation, an activist. He's the author of over 20 books. He's taught at all the top universities in this country, in this world, in a sense. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. You're now a professor of theology at Union Theological Seminary here in New York City. But he's also taught for over 4 decades in our prisons, at Rahway State Prison and Garden City Prison in New Jersey. He's running as independent for the presidency of the United States, articulating as he has for his entire life, the needs, the sufferings of the poor, the disenfranchised, the marginalized, working people, the least among us, the wretched of the poor, here and around the world. So I'm so honored and blessed, and it's just wonderful to have you here.
Man.
Thank you.
You blessed me by allowing me to come back, my brother. You blessed me in a mighty way. You have that unique combination, though, man, of a sweetness of spirit and a sharpness of mind, and a fighter.
Yeah.
You think about the folks who were here, the Carl Dixes,
Absolutely.
in jail, and Randy Vrettos, and the moral technique, the towering revolutionary hip-hop artists. And of course, you and Beatty always go together just like man and I hate to go together.
Absolutely.
Our beloved wives, absolutely.
We totally lucked out on that one.
Well, it was more than luck. I got a theology about that. But
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
grace is a little bit deeper than luck. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's a gift that you don't deserve. Luck has to do with some lottery. Things just happen to occur. You know, Brother Peter knows what I'm talking about with Leland, and he's a campaign manager. He's been a gift, and Edwin is here, and I can go fish and his beloved daughter. This brother's such a towering artist, man. He's the graphic designer, and he's really an artist of the campaign as well. And I can go on and on. I know I'm skipping a lot of people. Brother Aaron, the lawyer, working with us. We're blessed. But most importantly, that we're in it together, no matter how difficult things get, because we're living in such a moment of overwhelming grimness and dimness. And one of the fundamental questions we have is, how do you preserve some form of morality and spirituality in a time of barbarity? And by barbarity, what I mean is the expansion of organized hatred, organized greed, and manipulated fear, and routinized envy and resentment. That's part of the history of the species. We know that.
Right.
But at this particular moment, where it's thrown in front of our eyes day in and day out, it could be corporate media, it could be larger social media as a whole, we cannot but be like Jacob in the 32nd chapter of Genesis, wrestling with despair in the midnight hour and trying to emerge with new visions and new energies.
Isn't that so much about your life in this campaign, in a sense? It's a moment in a movement.
That's right.
And it's, you're probably, you know, I don't know if you want me to say it this way, but I will. I really see you as the Martin Luther King of our time, as if he was running for president. This is what would happen. This is the sort of message he would try to get across. Would you agree with that?
No.
You
no,
wouldn't.
no. Oh, Lord, no, I can't.
Well-
I'm not worthy to carry Brother
well-
Martin's bags. But I tell you this,
Tell me.
if Martin Luther King Jr. came back from the dead and
Right.
ran for president on the Democratic Party, we wouldn't have to run. We wouldn't have to run at all. Because this is not about individuals. It's about not trying to win. You want to make sure poor and working people are attended to. You want to make sure that the wretched of the earth, not just in the American empire, but around the world,
Right.
have people who are raising voices in such a way that we're aware, we recognize their suffering, and something must be done about it. Now, that's Martin's legacy. I am a very small part of Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer, Rabbi Heschel,
You're
and
being
Dorothy Day's
modest.
legacy. No.
Okay.
But I'm serious, man. I'm
Oh.
just trying to be Eddie Kendricks, man. And Martin is Luther Vandross. I mean, you know, we got
Okay.
different levels and registers here. But don't get me wrong. It's true that when I was 14 years old, Brother Martin was shot down like a dog. I thought I was going to be the next Willie Mays and the next James Brown, because that's what my ending aim was. And I decided then that I would have a calling to make the world safe for the legacy of Martin. Very much so. Like Plato wanted to preserve the legacy of Socrates no matter what. And so ever since I've been talking about preserving the legacy of Martin King. When we first met, it's the same thing. We talked about that in jail. Is that right, Brother Carl?
We did. Yes, we did.
We talked about, now see, Carl, got a critique of Martin Luther King Jr. You know, he's a revolutionary.
We know. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm a revolutionary Christian. He's a revolutionary communist. Well, we overlap. We love each other, but he's wrong about some things. And I'm wrong. And I'm wrong about some things. We work it out.
He's
We
coming
work it
around
out.
to
Well,
understand,
no,
yeah.
we just keep
We'll see.
learning from each other.
Right.
We take bullets for each other.
Absolutely.
See, we in foxholes together. Is that right, Brother Carl?
Right.
That's real. It really is.
So, as a radical healer, practicing radical love, how do you go up against the narrative, this overwhelming narrative of greed and materialism and hatred and the centuries of patterns of violence and hatred? How do you break that pattern? How do you begin to get people to understand the trauma that people are experiencing on all kinds of sides, on both sides? In the Middle East conflict, right? You have Israeli Jews still remembering the Holocaust, and the Palestinians remembering the Nakba, their own catastrophe. You spend a lot of time thinking and talking about catastrophes. What do you do about people who have such competing catastrophes or narratives of opposing catastrophes? And they're together in the same land. They're not going anywhere. They can't go anywhere. And yet on both sides, you find elements who say, this is my land. So how do you, as a radical love warrior, heal those traumas?
Yeah, that's a profound question, though, brother. It really is. I think the first step is to accent the enabling virtue, which is courage, which allows for other virtues like justice or love or magnanimity or whatever. Because I believe, God bless you, that the history of the species is not just a narrative. These are persistent realities.
Yeah.
The history of the species is one in which dominant forms of behavior tied to greed and hatred and fear, structures of domination, exploitation, and oppression. And the best of our species, and it comes in a number of different forms. It could be secular, it could be Islamic, it could be Judaic, it could be Christian, it could be Buddhist or what have you, but are those who try to create moments of interruption and eruption. Because that's what love is on an interpersonal level. Right? That's what friendships are. That's what self-determination of various collective groups are, what democracy is. All of these are moments of interruption in a history of overwhelming suffering. I mean, Hegel said what? History is a slaughterhouse. Gibbon said history is a series of human crimes and follies. They're not wrong. It's just that we can't allow those to have the last word. We can't deny it, but we cannot allow them to have the last word. So that when you go into any conflict, you start off with an assumption. We human beings are wretched as a species. That's just who we are, no matter what color, gender, national identity, sexual orientation, or whatever. Given that reality, at the same time, we're wonderful.
Yeah.
Because we have the capacity to love, the capacity to organize for justice, the capacity to generate hope. And I was just talking to my dear brother Bobby here, the great jazz artist himself. That is the artists who in many ways are the vanguard of the species, because they are the ones who remind us of what those moments of interruption are about, and they give it concrete embodiment in sound. Words are too inadequate. As T.S. Eliot says in Bert Norton, they slip, they slide, they strain, they crack. We need something more than words. What's beyond words? Silence. That's what you often have in the face of overwhelming suffering. Our Hasidic brothers and sisters taught us that.
Yeah.
Weeping, silence, song.
Song. That's the last part. Yeah.
You see, but it's a process. So the words themselves are so bastardized and so misused so often, and yet we're stuck with them. But we have something more than words. Right? We got silence. We got song. We got tears. We got laughter. But in the end, we have concrete examples of human beings who choose to change the world and not allow catastrophe to have the last word. So in many ways, my campaign really, in some ways, is about reintroducing America to the best of itself. And the best of America has to do with these concrete examples. And one could argue that one of the grand examples of the best of America is the musical tradition, which is disproportionately shaped by black folk, but not exclusively. And what is it about that tradition of blues? The blues is catastrophe lyrically expressed, honestly confronted, artistically transfigured. So it generates hope, and hope is not just a verb, but a virtue simultaneously. Motion. Concrete examples of persons who, in the face of overwhelming despair, you don't deny the despair, but you say, in the face of that despair, what you gonna do, Billie Holiday? Let me sing about some strange fruit that the Jewish brother Maripol wrote in the lyrics. What you gonna do about it, Curtis Mayfield? Let me tell you how to keep it on. Yes, exactly. Keep on pushing. And of course, black folk don't have a monopoly on this, even though that is my tradition. I come out of the black freedom tradition, and so I'm very honest about my particularity. And if you get particular enough in the best of your own history, then you end up embracing all of humanity. The most universal is the most particular. If you're running from the particular, you end up with abstract universals, which is usually an imitation of somebody else. But if you really dig deep into your own history, mama, daddy, why'd you put all of this love and courage and integrity inside of me? That's gift, that's grace. I didn't deserve it. How do I be true to that particularity that leads me to be in solidarity with oppressed people around the world, no matter who they are? They could be Palestinians right now in Gaza. They could be folk hating Jews anywhere. I'm in solidarity with the Jews who are being hated. It could be in Latin America. It could be in Peru. It could be in Cuba. No matter where, people suffering, people oppressed, they are worthy of our solidarity. And they are worthy of us trying to raise our voices in such a way that their suffering is not rendered invisible. Now, it gets very complicated in various historical moments, because it looks as if, well, you're dashing back and forth, or you're accused of being on both sides. You believe Palestinian baby has the same value as the Israeli baby, and they say, oh, you're on both sides. I'm concerned about babies.
Yeah,
yes,
right,
no matter who they are. That's who I am. I'm going down like that. Yeah. Well, you also have to take a stand. I've already taken a stand against the vicious Israeli occupation. I've already taken a stand, will forever take a stand against any kind of genocidal attack on anybody even at the moment in Gaza. I've already taken a stand to make sure, in fact, that if innocent Jewish brothers and sisters are being killed, I'm going to raise my voice.
Absolutely.
You see, it's not a matter of
It's consistency.
And that's why I don't even think it's both sides. You know, there's a variety of different sides, but the question is, what kind of witness to your morality and spirituality will you enact in your voice, in your words, in your body, in your solidarities, you see? And so it always goes beyond any kind of party or orthodoxy or dogmatic formulation, a Manichaean view, all the good on one side, all the bad on the other. No, life's not like that. Humanity's not like that. We all have hatred and greed shot through us. And the question is, how much work are we willing to do on ourselves to try to push it back? Yeah. And so you can see in that sense, to be part of a tradition of struggle for black freedom, struggle for human freedom, that spills over into electoral politics at this particular moment in the decay and decline of the American empire, with the very narrow duopoly of two political parties, very narrow conception of what politics really is. Because these days politics is so tied to legalized bribery and normalized corruption in both parties. Both parties. How do you break out of that? And most importantly, convince your fellow citizens that they shouldn't feel hopeless and helpless, right, if they think there's no alternative to the corporate duopoly.
Absolutely. But how do we get people to have this more universal feeling where, as you've said before in other interviews, nationalist ideology seems to be the dominant one around the world? You see that happening over and over again. We're in our own political silos here.
No, it's true. No, nationalism is probably the most powerful ideology of the modern world. Yeah. That the age of Europe generated conceptions of protection, association, and recognition in the nationalist mode. And so that became dominant. You see, that's why when you look for working class movements, where is the internationalism of working class movements compared to the nationalism of workers, the nationalism of elites, the nationalism of everyday people? Feminists the same way, right? Feminist internationalists want to be internationalists tied to progressive conceptions of gender. Well, no, most of the women we know in the world tied to the flag rather than internationalism. Black folk the same way. Yeah. Not just because Obama, even though Obama made black folk flag waivers in ways they had never been flag waivers before. But even still, even with black folk, you know, you put that American flag up, they're willing to live and die to join the army. You put blackness up, well, let's have a conversation and a seminar, but I'm not going to die for it. Yeah. And that's true for the ethnicity, that's true for a whole host of things.
But hurting their careers. And the idea of a vocation rather than just being trained to be a professional or a career and making it. How do you grapple with that? How do you change our thinking in the country and around the world?
Yeah, it's just by example, though, man. Mm-hmm. It really is. And we should never get discouraged by the small numbers. You know, it was just a few thousand folk in the United States who were abolitionists and kept telling the country, you're headed toward a stone wall if you don't come to terms with the vicious legacy of white supremacy. John Brown, Brother Randy has a magnificent show on John Brown. John Brown, of course, I'm critical of John Brown because like Nat Turner, he's killing some innocent folk. So I can identify with the spirit of resistance of John Brown, the spirit of resistance of a Nat Turner. But I don't believe in killing innocent white kids just because their fathers and mothers are white supremacists. They're still innocent in that sense. So you have to keep the moral dimension even as you identify with the spirit of resistance. But what was it about those folk? They were willing to cut against the grain with small numbers, and sooner or later they were like canaries in the mine. Oh my God, we should have listened to John Brown. We should have listened to Frederick Douglass. We should have listened to Harriet Tubman. We end up leading toward the curtain being ringing down nearly on the U.S. democratic experiment, given its imperial backdrop with genocidal attacks on indigenous peoples, with the enslavement of black folk. with the marginalization of white working men who had no property, and women, of course, constrained to patriarchal households that were often quite ugly as well. We haven't even got to our precious gay and lesbian and trans folk as well. But concrete example, that's why praxis. I mean, Marx is absolutely right about that. You see that all the correct analysis in the world is sounding brass and tinkling cymbal if you're not willing to put it in action.
Stand in the breach, as Reverend Barber.
Yeah, Brother William Barber, he understands it.
He understands.
Now, he's the closest thing to Martin King in the culture, but he's still far removed. But he's the closest thing. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some other figures that you could mention in our own day? Besides,
You talking about the quick or the dead?
those who are still with us.
Oh, so we're still with us.
As you put it, it's one of my favorite phrases too. You know, you talk about the brief time we have between womb and tomb.
Yeah.
It's but you're right.
But
What
not
do
here
we
that
do
long.
during this brief time that we're here? How do we live our life? What makes a difference? And
For me, really, it has a lot to do with piety. See, piety is a virtuous acknowledgement of the sources of good in our lives from womb to tomb, beginning with mom and dad, beginning with friends, beginning with intellectual relatives and existential ancestors and others. So that, the Curtis Mayfields and the Anton Chekhovs and the Stephen Sondheims and the Sarah Vaughan's and others, they mean the world to me. I don't exist. I mean, Anna Heath would be the first one to tell you. We spend many a time at night after reading 3 or 4 hours, so baby, doing what? Turning on YouTube and just seeing the dramatic scene for 45 minutes. Seeing Tito Puente, seeing these persons who are giving everything of themselves, the kenosis, the self-emptying, to try to do what? To touch people, to touch their souls, to give them some sense of wind at their back so that they don't succumb to despondency and despair. That's not abstract at all. That is concrete as a heart attack. Everybody needs it in life, no matter what age they are, what stage they are in their lives. And so those are the persons who mean much to me. But it begins with Irene and Cliff.
Yeah.
That's
Mom and Dad.
Oh, yeah, I am who I am. They love me to
Absolutely.
death in a way that I don't have a language for it. I can't sing
They must have.
in an adequate way. So that in that way, to be true to them means that I would have to live 3 or 4 lifetimes in the midst of grim and dimness
I understand.
and never succumb to any kind of hatred as a conclusion. I'm wrestling with hatred every day as a human being, but that I will not allow it to have the last word in that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wish we had your mom on the show. We almost.
She's here.
Yeah, she is. We
always
came
here.
we came close, but
Did you ever meet Mom?
not personally. But
personally.
we would talked about
Yeah,
her
we talked
coming
about
on
her
the
in
show,
jail
and
cell and things.
yeah, we did. But listen, let me take a couple of questions from the audience
my
here.
God,
So
yeah.
we want to make sure our audience has a say in some of your answers here. What efforts are you planning to grow? How are you planning to grow the campaign? You're going to go into Trump territory, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the groups that you're concentrating on, so you can make this movement of the left in America and progressive groups under the same roof? You want a national unity, right, of the left? How are you going to help bring that about?
Well, it's not just national unity of the left.
Right, that's the question.
Exactly. We want to touch a variety of different persons and
Right.
human beings of different colors and regions and religions or non-religions in such a way that they can begin to see things differently and they can feel things more deeply. And I mentioned we got Brother Peter here. We could just lay out a whole strategy of this thing. We got Brother Edwin there. You all, I hope you saw his magnificent video. You could already see UAW strike. You could already see standing with the workers. You can already see beginning with Ground Zero in Mississippi with the Emmett Till family and dealing with the Precious Jenkins and Parker, 2 brothers who were brutalized by the police with bullet going through their neck and their tongues and so forth and so on. Are we going to do? We were just talking just the other day about a tour of black colleges. Magnificent, magnificent. We're going to New England. You know, it's much more vanilla up there than Mississippi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I've been to Maine.
And you've been up there.
It's
though,
pretty
brother.
country. Well,
But they just as human as the black folk in Mississippi. You speak to them, you speak to their needs, you listen and learn. I've spent already much time with black farmers, with Brother Michael Stovall. He was with us in Mississippi, as well as Lawrence Lucas, with the trade union movement, concerned about the feminist movement, reproductive rights, and so forth. But it's especially the case with the younger generation. Yeah. You see, because an older brother like me, you know, I'm not going to be around that much longer. And just to be able to, well, I'm on ball time just like you, but that's all right. We take it.
Remember, we've got Anahisa and B. You're not going to.
Oh, no, but they're going to be with us till the end.
Well, all right.
They're going to be with us till the end.
Got a long ways to
go here. All right, go ahead.
Well, whether we do or not, the good news is that whatever time we have,
right,
we're going to take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
You know, you remember Bobby Seale's memoir?
Seize the time.
Seize the time.
Every day.
Kairos. Teasing out Kairos from Chronos. Teasing out those meaningful moments out of routine time. And making those Kairos moments transformative so you end up stronger with your back straight as you live and laugh and swing and fight and so forth.
But as you know, Stanley wrote about this.
Yes,
the nature of work.
Yes, he did.
The new left formation.
So much time is spent at work doing just mediocre routine, taking the life out of people.
That's exactly right. It's a wonderful book by Tim Wu called The Attention Merchants. And the way in which social media and a variety of other contemporary forms try to take attention away from people. You see, one of the first things Plato says about education in the Republic is education is about the formation of attention. Simone Weil makes the same point. To attend to the things that matter in life. But so much is bombarding us to get our attention away from the things that matter. The superficial things, the surface things, the things that are tertiary and secondary. What about life and death and joy and sadness and sorrow and what it means to be a human being and issues of character and integrity and honesty and decency? Those are the ones pushed to the margins in our culture because the attempt of the market is to do what? To seize our attention, to keep us oriented toward consumption, to keep us oriented toward ways of being in the world that reinforce our narcissism, reinforce our individualism, reinforce our careerism and our opportunism, and you lose out on exactly what Hamlet left out, which is don't cultivate the ability and capacity to love. Shakespeare saw it so clearly. Dostoevsky makes the same point in Brothers Karamazov. Hell is those who do not cultivate the capacity to love. And we have a whole culture where the attempt is to make sure we attend to the things that don't allow us to cultivate the capacity to love and care and have sympathy and empathy for other people. Again, the artists play an important role here. Even though it's a market-driven art market. I know Brother Fish understands what I'm talking about. No matter what, you cut against that grain as an artist, right? And that's crucial. And all of us do it in our own lives. And in the end, I mean, it's like Plato's Prospero and that swan song of the Tempest. It's the art of living who are the great artists. Remember, Shakespeare said he speaks for the first time out of his own individual mouth. He says, all my words are straw if you haven't understood that they were written in order to cultivate the art of living, not to bring attention to me as the wordsmith that I am. That's Brother William from Stratford on Avon. That's Shakespeare himself. Doesn't get too much deeper in the English language. And we can filter through all the British imperialism we want. Shakespeare's still there waiting for us. Yeah. Because that's the kind of role that art and wisdom and vision and courage play. It never goes out of style, as my brother Clifton said, you see. It never goes out of style. And that's another reason why Coltrane, this is yours.
That's all right.
Behind him.
Coltrane never go
Go
out
on.
of style. See, that Love Supreme never go out of style. Even if we blow ourselves up, the cockroaches gonna say, let's hear a little Love Supreme. Oh, yeah. That species still has something to say. They just couldn't come to terms with their own self-destructiveness. Because that's the best, and we know there's a worst in each one of us, and the worst too often are running things in D.C., in Moscow, in Tel Aviv, and a whole host of other very power centers in the history of our species at this historical moment.
Learning to live and not just learning to make a living.
That's it. That's it. That sounds like John Ruskin right there, my brother. Life is wealth, not commodities of wealth, he says. Yes.
What would it, you've talked about this? What would it mean for you and the country to become head of the empire?
To dismantle it.
Well, that means some of us gonna get killed. This empire is something else. These entrenched interests are something else. Look at these war manufacturers right now. They just break dancing to the bank. What's going on in Ukraine? What's going on in the Middle East right now? What is it? Something like already it's 45% increase.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. You read that today. United States, 45% of all military exports. That particular wing of predatory capitalist processes are making gobs of big money and profits. And that is to be acknowledged because, the people, they have a sense of what's really going on in terms of the money-making activity.
They do. They do.
Yes, absolutely.
Across the board.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
Absolutely.
But there's no real viable alternative. And that's what I think you're struggling to.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
That's
struggling
exactly.
to achieve and do.
But we have to understand, too, that the history of the American left has always been one in which we've been relatively weak and feeble. We've never had a strong American left. American culture itself has been one that's so tied to short-term gains, so tied to market sensibilities. And when we do have a strong left, you got vicious repression coming at you, COINTELPRO, assassinations, character assassinations, and so forth and so on. And yet the left has continued. And so I don't want to downplay the tremendous resilience of the left, but the American society itself is one that makes it very, very, very difficult for the left to emerge. The business of America's business, said Calvin Coolidge, and he's not, I don't like to invoke him too much, he's not a great truth teller, but he was right about that. He's right about that. It's money. The permanent government of each city is big business. The permanent government of United States is the corporate elite. Military industrial complex and so forth, you see. Where is the civic support, even for our artists, like in France and other countries? You see what I mean? It's all exactly. Money, 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 money. So you would think Liberace is better than Art Tatum. Well, we got to get off the crack pipe. But he shows up, he's got millions of people watching him. Art Tatum shows up and like Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, supposedly blind, but he's seeing things we don't see. Oscar Peterson hears it on the chocolate side of Montreal, Canada.
Yeah.
And Dorothy Donegan hears it, the great black woman pianist and others, you see. They own their own. Fall back on the market. So that shows you America is not a mature civilization. We're very unique in terms of moving from perceived innocence to corruption without a mediating stage of maturity. That's who we've been as an empire. Which is not to say we don't have great individual persons. It's not to say we don't have some marvelous traditions. But when people look back on us 150 years from now, if we are here, and the American Gibbon puts pen to paper on the rise and fall of the American empire, what are they going to say? These people were obsessed with money, markets, territorial expansion, indifferent to the sufferings of those that they crushed. Didn't even want to count the number of Iraqis that they were responsible for. Didn't even want to keep track of the million in Vietnam. Hardly wanted to even apologize for what they did to black folk. Hardly wanted to apologize to indigenous peoples. But they had some beautiful music. Baseball was magnificent. And they had some nice food, not so most original, but it was fine. Right? And they had some musical theater. Thank God for those Jewish brothers and sisters that made it from Jew-hating Europe and came to New York and created this musical theater from Hammerstein to Sondheim and so forth and so on. So there are some wonderful moments. But generally speaking, they fell prey to the forms of idolatry. They ended up worshiping the golden calf, which meant there's no golden rule
Right.
when you worship the golden calf. And you view life as a gold rush if you worship the golden calf. So in the meantime, we say what? We're countervailing forces. We're going to push back on the worst of America and accent the best of America. Well, it doesn't look like you can win. Well, I come from a folk who had 244 years of the most barbaric slavery in modern times. It never looked like they can win either. But they still lived lives of decency and dignity at their best, and they sang songs, and they generated some families and institutions that they passed on to those who came after. I can see the same thing in my brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico, still colonized, but betwixt and between empire and nation, but also tied to that same tradition of that magnificent hybridity of Africa and indigenous peoples and Europe, and generating, here come Hernandez, here come a whole host of towering figures doing what? Tied to dignity, tied to decency.
And a shout out to Kelly Hall Tompkins, who's in the audience today,
Yes.
who was Fiddler on the Roof for 13 months on Broadway.
And now is touring, playing the violin concerto by
The great Wynton
your-
Marsalis?
Marsalis.
Yes, indeed,
So
indeed,
that's-
indeed. Yeah. That's a beautiful
And
thing.
playing that music also in shelters as well, not just Carnegie Hall.
Yes, absolutely.
Universal messages. So
Absolutely. No, it's a beautiful thing. Very much so.
What are
Very much so.
here's another question. What would be your specific steps for providing affordable housing?
Let's get down to what would a West administration look like for everyday Americans in their everyday lives?
But there would be a massive transfer of funds from the military into social investment that satisfy the needs of everyday people. So I'm an abolitionist. See, I don't want any kind of truncated treatment toward poverty. I want to abolish poverty. I want to abolish homelessness. I want to abolish unhousedness. I've told my beloved Anahita over and over again, when we win, I'm not moving into the White House, but everybody has a house. Just as an example. Where you gonna stay? We'll find a place somewhere.
Yeah, you're welcome in our place.
Yeah, we should hang out. Hang out with me.
Well, yeah, we got a couple extra rooms.
But all that does is do what? It just generates a certain ethos and a certain spirit to use the bully pulpit in such a way. You, my dear sister, who's a magnificent producer, we ought to give it up for this stuff.
Nada Mendez.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And Dan Coughlin also.
And Brother Dan, who we can't see in the dark, but we know he's back there working.
Back there.
We know he's back there working.
Absolutely.
But it means then you've got to connect foreign policy to domestic policy. You see, the military adventurism is integral to the austerity that goes hand in hand when it comes to our precious poor and working people who don't have access to decent housing, don't have access to health care for everyone. I'm with Brother Bernie Sanders in that regard. You know, I was with him twice. And not sad that I did. You know, I love my brother. I just think he's wrong this time. But that's all right. That's fine. I could be wrong too, but I don't think I am. But that free health care is important. Free education in the same way. And more than that, though, it's a matter of getting people to see that when you actually adopt a very different vision and look at the world through very different lens, that has an emancipatory impact on you.
So what you mean by when you refer to soulcraft?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, both of our wives are magnificent students of psychology, practitioners of psychology, psychiatrists, and so forth. And they know that I mean, soulfulness in the Black tradition is about the sharing of a soothing sweetness against the backdrop of grim catastrophe.
Hmm.
That's what it is. That's what you hear in the voice of an Aretha or David Ruffin. A sweetness that touches us. You see. Now, what is it that actually gets people to overcome whatever obstacles or whatever forms of blindness, willful or not willful, that they find themselves locked into?
Yeah.
It's light and feeling cared for.
Yeah. Big
You see, the
question.
light is illumination in the sense that you matter. Is that a fair characterization of our two practitioners in the audience? Look at my wife is looking at me a little funny though, like I haven't captured
No,
all of
she's-
it.
she's
But those are the those are the two features that are fundamental. You see, is that right, Sister B?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And crises really make people stop and think in ways that they don't
They hadn't
typically
before.
do when you're just going about your business every old day.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And that's where we're at now.
Well, we're always at crises.
Yeah.
We got to keep in mind that even though we're wrestling with our precious brothers and sisters in Gaza and so forth, and we're wrestling with this very ugly mutual hatred under conditions of a vicious Israeli occupation where each life is still precious. But crisis is something that's always already at work somewhere in the world. We just happen to be more attentive to it at the moment. The very moment where we think we're not in crises, well, you're not in contact with what's going on in the Congo. You're not in contact with what's going on in Indonesia. You're not in contact with what's going on in Uruguay or whatever. You see, crisis is something that's shot through. You remember that wonderful line in our Vanilla Blues brother Samuel Beckett in Waiting for Godot, where he says, the tears of the world are a constant quantity. Constant quantity. The question is, what are we going to do in the face of that to deal with the source of those tears? Now, that's supposedly the poet of despair, Samuel Beckett. No, he's a blues man. The catastrophe seems to be so mighty, but for Beckett, the love, the courage is mightier than the catastrophe. Not because it will change it, but because it would allow us to live through it and pass it on to the next generation. Now, Chekhov, of course, is the greatest figure. You know, that's my greatest artist of all time.
Right.
But we don't have time to get into the genius
Well,
of Chekhov right now.
Right.
He's deeper than the blues, actually.
Absolutely. So it's not waiting for God either. We're not waiting for Godot. We're not waiting for Lefty. It's not a matter
That's
of
right.
waiting. It's doing it. It's action.
That's
practice.
or at least trying to do.
Trying to do something. Yeah.
Trying to do.
Not be
something.
immobilized and not be fearful.
That's right.
Straighten your back. Because when you look at it, these people are not all that they're made out to be. Not all that.
Oh, not every ruling class
Absolutely.
has gone under. Every empire has come and gone.
Absolutely.
Neil Ferguson tells us in his wonderful book on the rise and fall of the American empire. And he's a deeply conservative brother, but he's got insight.
Right.
The United States is the 68th empire in the history of the species, number 68.
Out of 70, right?
That's exactly right. Then you read that same text, though, didn't you?
Well, I heard you talk about it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, to be honest
I
about
thought
it.
you read it.
Well, I'm going to read it after
No,
the show.
no,
Yeah,
no.
we all are,
No,
aren't we?
Ferguson
Yeah.
got something to say, and that's not an easy thing to say because you see, I don't believe in being abstract about the collapse of empires, because our precious babies are in these empires, some precious human beings in these empires, and they also go. You see, and so we have to be, as Martin put it, he said we have to try to put out the fires. We have to be ambulance when your empire is in decay and decline. You keep track of your child and the other children, even as the empire is declining, because their lives are just as precious as anybody else's life 100 years ago or somewhere else in the world. You see, so we don't want to just an abstract discourse about the decline and decay, because it is in decline and decay. You can see it every day. But in terms of the lived experience of actual concrete human beings who are so precious and breathing and hungry for hope and some sense of mission and purpose, We have to do all we can to pass it on to them. That's the crucial thing for me, you see. And that's where soulcraft comes in, because you and I know that integrity and honesty and decency is not reducible to politics. It's not reducible to ideology at all. Some of the folks who have the exact same analysis as I do, some of the folks who may even march in the same demonstration, still got strong gangster proclivities. And if they were running things, they'd crush me like a cockroach, because they don't have enough character, integrity, honesty, decency. Some of the folks that I disagree with, and I'm fighting with foes and enemies, some of them do have integrity. They just happen to be wrong about a number of things. And we all experience that every November around Thanksgiving. You sit down with your mama and your daddy and your aunt and your uncle and grandma and granddaddy, and most of them do not have the same ideological analysis that you do. But you know, and I see this in prisons for 41 years, that when you go to prison, every month, every 2 weeks, your mama and your friend and some of the folk who love it will go see you. Whereas some of the folk who had an ideological agreement with you forget about you when you're in there. That's a matter of character and lack of character. I see it all the time in the prisons. I see it with Mumi Abu Jamal, my dear brother, who we spent so much time wrestling with. You see, when Charles, with Chris Hedges and James Cohn and I go see him. Say, Mumi, who comes to see you? Yeah. Well, my aunt with her Bible. Now, you know she's not on the cutting edge for a revolutionary communist project, but she loves her some Mumia. So she's there for him. And some of his comrades can't find him. Now, not all of them, because, you know, Pam and Africa and them are there all the time. They're just full of so much love. We know that. But I'm just making this general point in that way. And that's very important, it seems to me, because we can't lose sight of each other's humanity in the face of blinding ideologies, but we have to be candid about our ideological differences, because they clash and it affects people at a life and death level. So you can have those strong clashes and still be in contact. Same is true in the band. I know Brother Bobby's band. I'm sure you got a whole lot of folks in your band got different political orientations, right? 24 of them. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yes, my brother.
Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. But when it's time to hit those notes, and Brother Bobby comes down on it, Multiverse. Is that the name of that new album? And the subtitle?
Well, the title is Vox Humana. The band is the Multiverse Big Band.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what it is. The Multiverse Big Band. Yeah, exactly.
Vox Humana, the voice of the people, voice of the people.
Yeah,
I got one.
my beloved wife.
You got your copy too.
Where's the camera at? That's Brother Bobby right there. Oh, you got one right there too. Oh, you got
well,
two.
You got one too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. Because we just met, but I can tell he's my kind of brother, though.
Yeah, listen to his music. But listen, we have a number of questions at a very practical level here. Can you tell us a little more about the strategy of the campaign? Are you? I know Brother Zool's been interested in. Are you going to try to bring other people in to the movement and at other levels, governors and Congress people? We have Jonathan Soto here as well in the audience. He's running 82nd Assembly, right? Is Jonathan in the room? I guess he might have gone to the other room there. But in any case, we need to bring other people in, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
And so tell us a little more about the strategy to build this.
Well, the first strategy, of course, is to get on these ballots.
Yeah.
The ballot
Also,
access,
how you
very
gonna do
much
that?
so. We were just talking about that just the other day with Brother Peter, that we're fairly sure we can get on at least initially 15 to 18 fairly easily. We can fight to get on about 30 or 35. What do you say, Brother Peter?
Yeah, somewhere 30, 35. We're aiming for all 50.
We're all on 50, but if we can get on about 35, 40, then we'd be in very, very good
Great.
shape in that regard. That means you have to go to each state. Now, each state has different requirements. Some states it's easier as an independent to get on the ballot than being third party candidate. Other states it's the opposite. But it's a matter, and we just plan to go to each one of those states and make sure we get all those signatures to
Right.
make sure. Now, New York, as you know, is very, very difficult.
And again, the
Very
system makes it
difficult.
so difficult for someone like you know.
Well,
all
the two
ways-
parties make it very difficult to perpetuate themselves and preserve their own
Yeah.
power.
power base.
Absolutely, absolutely, very, very much. But our attitude is, whosoever will, let them come. Whosoever will, let them come. We're going to Trump country. We're going to speak to a variety of those brothers and sisters of all colors that think
one of
that
10
Trump is the only alternative
Right.
to the Democratic Party. We'll tell them there's a better alternative to the Democratic Party. You don't have to opt for a neo-fascist Pied Piper in that regard. A lot of their pain has to be spoken to. A lot of their frustrations, their fears and anxieties need to be spoken to. They're human beings just like anybody else, but they're making choices that are so myopic and it's shot through with just too much xenophobia and scapegoating the most vulnerable rather than confronting the most powerful.
And 10% of the Trump voters voted for Bernie
That's
as
right.
well. So there's you're focusing
exactly
on
right.
the 80 million or so, correct, of people who did vote.
Yeah, 40% or so don't vote.
40% don't vote. So there's a
That's true.
large segment.
And about 62% who voted for Sister Jill Stein and Brother Jamo Baraka in 2016, the Green Party said they would never, ever, ever vote for the Democrats or Republicans under any circumstances.
Really?
And that's growing as well. So that's part of the group that we're trying to get at, even as we speak to the so-called mainstream. The mainstream, of course, is under change and transformation. Things are shifting. And I tell you, things are so fluid in real time. I'm not convinced that either Biden or Trump will be the ultimate candidates for either party. I think Biden's running out of gas. I saw him walking up that airport today.
So who are they
The
going
grace
to?
of God's helping him get up there. I'm telling you, and, you know, all of us are getting older. You know, I'm suffering from cognitive decay.
I don't
I'm
see it.
70 years
I don't
old.
see any of that.
I said, no, I
Nothing.
oh, man.
Not true.
When I was 35, I think I had more going on than twice the age now because that's time. I'm not afraid of time. I'm not afraid of history. I'm not afraid of death. So in that sense, everybody goes through cognitive decline. Part of the question is how high you been at what level, so decline to go. But no, I know I shouldn't be saying that. I hate to, but I understand. But all I'm saying is I don't think Biden is going to be.
No.
There's a good chance he won't be. There is a chance that Trump will not
Really?
even
And
be
if
the
he
candidate.
is the candidate, in very practical terms, do you believe the ultimate moral imperative for the country and your campaign is the defeat of Trump?
It's more than that.
More than that.
Mhm.
Explain in just a few minutes we have. And,
Because of the choices between World War III with
wow.
Biden and Second Civil War with Trump, then the defeat of Trump could still lead to World War III, and the cockroaches are the only ones left. You got to keep it in the broader thing. Never forget what Coltrane said to Sonny Rollins. He said, Sonny, at the moment it looks like you're going down. Sonny had just pulled out and taken off a number of years practicing under the bridge in Brooklyn. And Train told him what? Sonny, always keep track of the big picture. Always keep track. Don't let the small picture in any way discourage you. And we got to keep track of the big picture. We're part of the world. And that every 193 countries, every human being on this planet is part and parcel of the human project. And each one of them have the same significance as any other human being. And so in that sense, to think that it's solely about Trump, I understand that, you know,
Yeah.
Trump is as dangerous as they come. He's been dangerous all his life.
Right.
He's just more dangerous now. But that's not the sole thing. Not at all. Because we could end up opting for something that is even as paralyzing or too paralyzing just because we're running from just one figure.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
In the minute or so that we have left, tell our audience how they can reach you, help you if they so want to, get involved in the campaign.
If I could just jump in, brother.
Oh, please.
Sure,
do.
we got
Peter.
my
Yeah,
campaign.
CornelWest2024.com. Sign up, volunteer, join. That's where you go, to the website.
That's it. That's it. Highly
Repeat that,
encouraged.
please. Peter.
CornelWest2024.com.
CornelWest2024.com.
You can't hear it from Peter?
You couldn't hear it from Peter, though. Yeah, no, but that's it. That's it. We got it, though, baby.
Okay, so we got it. We're going to reach you. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
my
We give it
brother.
up for Brother Jim.
Oh,
Brother
thank
Jim.
you, Cornel. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
All of you here, every single last one of you
Radical
being here.
imagination.
Yeah, radical imagination.
That's it. That's
Thank you
it.
so very, very much. And we'll see you again next week on the Radical Imagination.
Thank you.